r/AskReddit by Planet Reddit. Police officers. What's the dumbest thing you've ever seen a criminal do or say? I was police at the time. In the middle of the night my partner and I found a car in a cemetery. Stolen cars were dumped there regularly. The car had its windows down and it had only recently been left there. It was still warm to touch. It didn't flag up as stolen and through the window I could see a meth pipe in plain view. That gives us the ability to search the car. Inside we find a bunch of meth pipes. 3.5 grams of meth. A small amount of cannabis and a handgun. There was also a tablet phone that was unlocked, and while we were searching the car the tablet kept on receiving messages from people trying to score meth. I had a quick look through the phone and was able to figure out that the owner of the car had come out from the city. I worked rurally at the time to make a score from one of the local gangs. But the gang didn't want her turning up, so arranged to meet her at the cemetery and conduct business somewhere else. I leave a business card under the wipers. Not my card but the station's. And on the back I wrote that she, the owner of the car, should come down to the station if she wants to get her stuff back. And sure enough she did. At 9 the next morning. Methed out. Looking for her drugs and gun. Edit. Layout and clarity. Back before marijuana was legalized in California, I was burgled by some idiot teenagers who got caught while still in my house because my neighbor saw them and called the cops. In addition to some small electronics and all my spare change, they took my personal stash, like 3 grams, and my glass pieces. The police called me into the station to identify my things and take them back. They didn't return the pot, obviously. But they gave me back all my glassware and didn't mention anything about it. I always thought that was awfully cool of them. So my personal favorite was when a bloke on a motorbike swerved in front of our squad car and crashed. We hopped out, picked the bike up off him, it was pinning his leg, and asked, "You alright mate?" To which he replied, "Of course I'm alright. What do you mean?" "Well you just fell off your bike mate." "No I didn't." He just kept insisting that there was no way he could have crashed. And it must have been someone else. Edit for those concerned, it was a head injury. He did blow a .17 when tested. So we chalked it up to that. A guy who clipped my car with his motorcycle got off because his lawyer asked if I had actually seen his client on the motorcycle when he hit me. The guy was going about 80 when the speed was 50 and he tried to pass me really closely but clipped me. All I saw was a guy go flying through the air in front of me and a motorcycle sending sparks into the sky and catching on fire. Never actually saw him on the thing, so he didn't get charged. So dumb. I'm not a police officer, but I called the cops on my roommate in college because she tried to attack me and she wouldn't cooperate with the cops, so she got cuffed and was screaming about how she was gonna beat my ass. They were like, "Yeah? You were gonna beat her ass?" And she was agreeing LMAO. In court later the judge asked her, "So you think it's okay to beat someone's ass if they turn your TV off when you're not there?" And she nodded and said, "Yes I do," and the judge just deep sighed. Did she do jail time? No, but she got a big fat fine because they couldn't prove assault. She got charged with something lesser that had a max fine of like $1,500. Funny thing was she had a pay or appear date for like 3 days before the one she was assigned at our trial. So they agreed to just merge the 2 dates so she wouldn't have to appear twice. So that means she already went to court for something else and got fined for something else too. LMAO. Friend who is an officer told me this one a little bit ago. He was driving near where a known car thief lived. So he stops by. SUV in the driveway with no tags. Walks up. Runs the VIN. Stolen. Now the property had a house on it. And then out back, a small mother-in-law suite where said thief lived. Officer walks out back. Knocks. And then hears a car door. Officer starts running. Engine starts. And yup. Thief is driving away in the stolen SUV. Officer knows where he ditches stolen cars at. So has an officer stake out that area. Sure enough, 2 hours later the SUV rolls up with a Jeep following it. SUV driver wipes down the dash. Wipes down the outside door handle and gets in the Jeep. Officer pulls them over and arrests them both. Why both? The Jeep is stolen. Officer runs her license. Send another officer to her address and guess what? She had a stolen car at her place too. 3 stolen cars recovered. 2 people in jail. All because one officer decided to stop by a thief's last address. All because one officer decided to stop by a thief's last address. Imagine how many changes in how many people's lives that set off. Butterfly effect and all that. I was waiting to report an incident at a local police station when a clearly distraught man came in wheezing and sweating. I wasn't in a rush, so I'll let him go ahead of me. I've been robbed. They took everything, he exclaimed when he reached the counter. The officer working the desk asked him the usual what, where, why and how sort of questions. The gentleman proceeds to explain that he was a local meth dealer and he just got robbed of his entire stash while selling to some teens at the local train station. The officer just said that there's not anything they can do about that and it's in his best interest to just leave before more questions are raised, and he incriminates himself further. He was fuming and stormed out of the place, slamming the door behind him. I reached the counter and made an offhand comment towards the office that must be a first for you. Apparently not. Apparently drug dealers often come in to report theft of their illicit substances. I'm confused as to why they don't arrest them when they confess like that. Lack of evidence probably. If he still has something on him, it's a slam dunk. But if it's just his semi-confession, it might get thrown out and that would be a bunch of work for little gang. Not my story, but my police officer friends. He had gone in to arrest someone for dealing drugs. He was in full uniform, whilst someone else had already been in there undercover. The drug dealer looks at the undercover police officer and says, "You're undercover." "Yes." "Well done." He looks at my uniformed friend and says, "You're undercover too." He was not. Then he looks at someone else, not a police officer, and says, "And you?" Guy responds with, "How am I an undercover police officer? I just bought drugs off of you." And that's how they made an unexpected arrest at that raid. What a twist. 2 idiots for the price of 1. Not a police officer, but my father was a 911 dispatch operator. My dad was working one night and he gets a call from a man who is obviously drunk. "Dad, 911. What is your emergency?" "Drunk." "Yeah, UHH. I think I just heard a red car crash." "Dad, you heard a red car crash?" "Drunk." "Yeah." "Dad, okay. Police are on their way." Click. My dad finds out later that this dude was driving drunk and crashed his car not far from his house. Guy decides to get out of his car, stumble home, and dial 911 to report the fact that he heard a car crash. In his drunken mind, he figured he'd report the crash as someone who heard it and he'd get off somehow. But he had to specify the color, because apparently a red car crashing sounds different than a blue car crashing. Not a cop. Student paramedic here. Once went to a family with a 2-year-old with difficulty breathing. Walked into the house to find 4 people and the parents smoking weed with the baby in the room. The baby was crying and coughing, spluttering. Couldn't believe my eyes. My mentor swiftly rang for police backup and we filled out some safeguarding paperwork concerns. Pretty sure they arrested them on scene for neglect. Dad's a detective. Had a murder case where a dog walker found a severed head in a park. Over the rest of the morning they found a full set of chopped up body parts around that park. A trail of blood led from each part, and they followed them all the way back to a nearby house. In through the door and up the stairs to a room covered in blood with a guy asleep in a bed. Turns out this guy had got drunk with a friend. Had an argument. Killed him. Chopped him up and hid his body parts in the park before passing out back at the house. Police caught him literally red-handed. Apparently he was really confused how they got him so quickly. Jesus Christ. When did this happen? Probably about 15 years ago. Dad's been retired for 5 years. He's got some great stories when you get him drunk. I read a theft suspect her Miranda rights, to which she stated in a recorded interview, "I'm invoking my right to silence and a lawyer because I stole a lot of shit and I don't want to incriminate myself." Suspect was caught for drug possession on the streets, and we were talking to the prosecutor to get a warrant for his house. Somehow, He managed to call his wife without our notice, and as we realized what happened we heard him saying, "Honey, go take the fish out of the fridge." After we've got the warrant and searched his house, there was his fridge full of speed and the plate with fish which his wife had prepared for his return thrown in the trash. I stopped someone who was in the area of a load of theft from motor vehicles. After a bit of questioning I carried out a search and found numerous wallets, phones, etc. He claimed that all of the cards were his. All 13 different identities. To be fair, he stuck to his story. He carried it all the way to court going not guilty. Okay then. Mr. Jones, you are under arrest for 12 counts of theft. Mr. Fletcher, you are also under arrest for 12 counts of theft. Mrs. Rodriguez, you are under arrest for 12 counts of theft. Stopped a lady for speeding 15 miles per hour over the limit. I asked what her reason could be for going so fast. She said, "I live here. You can't give me a speeding ticket. I live just down the street. I live here. This is unbelievable. I live here." I was pulled over for doing 65 miles per hour in a 30. Honestly didn't realize it. I had just left my dad's new house, new area, and it was like 11 PM. Cop asked me why I was going so fast. I said I honestly have no excuse, I missed the speed limit signs I guess, and I was let go with a warning. But he said no cops. Not fair. Your Honor, he said there would be no cops and there was. I wouldn't have shown up had I known he was lying. I'm cop. You can't arrest me, I'm in a church. I have sanctuary. Alright. You have 40 days to either submit to the authorities and face trial, or go into exile by the shortest route and never return without the king's permission. If you should attempt to leave the church proper within this 40 days, you will be broken upon the wheel. All the people from To Catch a Predator. NBC has online transcripts. And they still come up with the stupidest excuses. Chris Hansen. Sir. What else could you mean by asking the girl if she was a virgin and then telling her you wanted to penetrate her anally? Predator. I'm just here to watch football, man, she told me she was 18. Hansen. In the transcripts you clearly say she's 13. You could get in trouble for this and ask her not to tell anyone. We need an entire subreddit just for those transcripts. I made one /Tokach an idiot have fun. I used to work in arraignments and a guy was entering his not guilty plea and confirming that he was true billed, that they have the right name on his charging instrument. After that the court asks if you can afford an attorney and asks some quick questions before giving you paperwork to request a court-appointed attorney. This guy was booked on unlawful use of a motor vehicle Class C. Basically stealing car stereos. The judge asks him if he's employed. He says no. The judge asks him what he does for money. Oh. I steal car stereos at rest stops and sell them. At rest stops? Who has gone from their car long enough to do that? Don't underestimate how quickly a good thief can get your head unit out. It's fairly difficult on newer vehicles. Especially the way they're integrated into so many things. Also, newer car head units are essentially useless unless you stick them in the same vehicle, and sometimes it needs the same option package. But 90s, late 2000s vehicles? Most of those can be stolen pretty quick. Especially if it's aftermarket. Motor vehicle stop. License and registration please. Proceeds to lean over to the passenger seat. Scoop up a handful of low mine and tries to put it in the officer's hand. He was locked up for DUI 4th offense. To this day I still wonder if he thought he was passing his correct paperwork or if the Chinese food was some sort of peace offering. Was once behind a dude at KFC who was clearly off his rocker on something. He's holding a plastic bag. Takes him 5 minutes just to get his order out to the lady. When she mentions how much it is he looks really confused. Then opens the bag. Reaches inside. And pulls out a round plastic lid and offers it to the lady. Oh, that's a container lid. Sir. He just looks at the lid super confused and tries to offer it for a second time. That's a paper clip. And a piece of string. Not a police officer but a witness to a crime who had to give evidence in court. Basically witnessed a girl crashing her car and barrel rolling it into a tree. She was clearly drunk. The fireman arrived after 10 minutes, her car had leaked petrol everywhere. Then her husband shows up on foot and tries to calm her down, followed by her mother in a car and the police. She tried to claim that she wasn't the one driving, even though no one else had been in the car. In court a year later, she said her mother had been driving, the one who showed up in her own car 10 minutes after the crash. She also punched an officer in the face and was pepper sprayed, but that's a whole other story. Needless to say, she was found guilty. What trash? Claiming her mother was the one driving. Dispatcher: had a guy call in and tell us that he's currently violating the protective order by being with his ex who is pregnant by him. Wants us to call the judge and get it dismissed so they can go inside the restaurant and eat. Officer is standing next to my partner who answered the call and asks the guys where he is so we can send the judge to him. Guy hangs up. Responded to an apartment complex for a kid eating a corn dog and was stuck on the roof. The FD arrives and gets the kid off the roof. I asked the kids why he was eating a corn dog on the roof. His answer was because I threw it up there. His look of duh left me speechless. Can't argue with kids' logic. This kid could be on the front cover of my biography. DUI Trial. Defendant chooses to represent herself. She tries to introduce evidence during the trial, but is quickly blocked by the prosecution. The judge, maybe taking pity on the flaming train wreck that was this woman's defense, asks to see the evidence. It was a receipt from the bar she left before I stopped her that showed that she purchased 2 large margaritas. Her whole defense was, I couldn't have been drunk after only 2 margaritas. She was found guilty. My initial reason for stopping her was that she drove down an embankment on the side of the road to get to a McDonald's drive-thru. Having worked drive-thru, I must unfortunately report that stone cold sober people will drive over embankments to enter/exit the drive-thru. That's because you need to do a 3-point turn, reverse park without mirrors and a 4-dimensional barrel roll to successfully exit the drive-thru. Some of them are not well designed. My friend is sober driving and there's not enough seats, so 2 people offer to go in the boot. On the way she gets pulled over and the officer comes up to the window and asks if she knows why he pulled her over. She says because of the 2 people in my boot. The cop says no, because you failed to indicate at the last intersection. But tell me more about the people in your boot. These are my pants. But those are not my pockets. Can't make this shit up. One of my favorite cops episodes was a guy they stopped and pulled some drugs out of his pants and his response was, these aren't my pants. The cop then said, oh. And whose pants are they? And why are you wearing them? Guy, I don't know. Edit. For reference. It was the Rancho Cucamonga episode at the Bass Pro Shop or similar store. The store had him on surveillance selling drugs. My favorite was when they found the suspect hiding under a house. Pull him out and go, are we going to find anything if we search under there? And the suspect says, no. But if you do, it's not mine. My ex to the cop who pulled him and his friends over. I'm so ducking high right now. I had a friend back in the day that earned the name DUI Don because he was driving a girl home after some partying one night. She was shit-faced and he was only high as balls. Gets pulled over. Could easily say that he's sober, happy to blow into the tube, etc. and get out of it. First thing he says to the cop is, I'm going to level with you. I'm really high. Spent that night in jail. The cherry on this, and the reason I know the full details of it all, is because the girl with him was 17 and, bonus, homeless. When she didn't have anywhere else to go, she gave them my address, an 18-year-old living alone, and I got to become her temporary legal guardian. Awesome night. Thanks DUI Don. Edit. Should have added S to that final thank you and awesome night. Just really makes you wanna slam your face into a wall. Huh. I can't even imagine being under the influence of weed or alcohol and telling a cop that. Ever. Sir, can I see your driver's license? I don't have one. Then why were you driving? I wasn't, I was traveling. MFW, I'm in a self-driving car and it doesn't pull over for the cop, resulting in a high-speed chase. There's a question I didn't know I wanted to ask until now. How would a self-driving car break traffic laws in the first place? Who would be responsible? Second-hand story. As I was the victim of burglary, but heard this from the police officer. I saw the guy breaking into my place on a security camera and called them. They managed to arrest the guy while he was still inside packing up my stuff. He was pretty cokey to the police, as that he thought that as he hadn't actually left with his bag of swag, my stuff, that he hadn't committed a crime yet. All he did was broke a window. He thought your house worked by shoplifting rules? Haha. My grandpa was a cop. He told me a story about how when he was still in uniform filling up his squad car, someone tried to rob him with a knife. Needless to say, that didn't work out for him. Edit. Some people were a bit confused. My grandpa just pulled his gun and arrested the man. Sorry for the confusion. Apparently it went something like this. Robber, give me your wallet. Grandpa. What? Robber, give me your wallet. Grandpa, are you sure you want to do that? Robber, yeah, now hand it over. Grandpa, okay, pulls gun out, you're under arrest. Robber, shocked face. Drugs are a hell of a drug. I can never understand how stupid people think. This one takes the cake. My brother is a Detroit cop. Told me this one. They get a call from someone reporting their car was stolen. They show up and it turns out someone had already stolen the tires off the car. Then a different group stole the actual car. They pushed it 2 blocks without tires and left perfect grooves in the street all the way to their garage. Their defense was, but we didn't steal the tires. Detroit. When we rob you, we really rob you. They couldn't find a car with wheels to steal? Not a cop but a corrections officer. 2 inmates got into a fight in a hallway. I was the closest to them and only saw the start of the fight out of the corner of my eye. In my report I wrote that I saw the 2 inmates fall to the ground with name on top of other inmate. Later, the hearing sergeant was reading the report to one of the inmates, so they could dispute any facts in the report they felt were untrue or biased. He asked the inmate if they wanted to dispute any facts in my report. The inmate said, yeah. We didn't fall to the ground. I grabbed the other inmate and slammed his ass on the floor. What would have been a simple fighting charge turned into an assault charge. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.